quite yet. We are hosting and inviting one of a key member of my team. His name is Braden Shaw. He heads up Fulcrum Home Loans as well as the Braden Shaw lending team. He is a huge asset. In fact, such a big asset. Let me tell you a quick little story before I bring him on. Just went to a closing today. It would not have closed if it were not for Braden. We beat out a cash deal. It was actually pretty sweet how it all worked out, but it really matters who you have on your team. Braden is no exception there. We are going to talk about the market. We're going to talk about different internet trends, and we're going to talk about different areas, Eagle, North Meridian, Ada County. But I want you guys to, when you're in, I want you guys to ask him questions, telling us where you're from. I am Brian Hymas. Those who are on my channel usually know me. Born and raised here in Boise, appraiser for 2 years before I've been in real estate for the last 6 years. Absolutely love all things Boise. That's why I put out the videos. And when we talk about the market, like I know the market, I know some stats, I know this and that, but I really feel like I know enough to be almost like more stupid for having known it, because things just sometimes don't. I feel like the more I know, the more I realize how complex the whole market issue is. So I want to bring on Braden and give Braden a chance to introduce yourself, Braden. And then I also want you to, hey, Braden, talk about the market and the state of the market with inflation and where we are seeing the market headed. Everyone wants to know what's the market going to look like tomorrow. And I'm sure you have your crystal ball on the desk. And so I want you to talk to that as well.
Always. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Yeah. Everything with the market is all me making my best educated guess. I love it. I research it all day. I love econ. It's probably my favorite part. The only thing I liked in college was the econ classes. So this is kind of my bread and butter, but take it all with a grain of salt, of course. So the last couple of weeks has actually been really interesting. It was a good timing for this podcast or live. Is the last 2 weeks have been really interesting. So about 2 weeks ago, an inflation report came out, and it was not as good as the Fed was hoping for. And then 2 days after that, we had unemployment numbers come out, and those came in really hot, which you think would be a good thing. They thought we were going to create 100,000 jobs. We ended up creating 800,000 jobs. And so came in really hot. But the Fed, the combination of those two, they really didn't like it. They actually want unemployment to go up. They want inflation to get under control. And so since then, about 10 days ago, rates are up about 1% in the last 10 days. So we're quoting no points in the high sixes, where I was down in the fives about a week and a half ago. And so we are moving pretty quick right now. We're still pretty volatile in rates. I still think the end of the year is going to be good for the rate world. I think we'll be in the low fives by the end of this year, but it's going to be a bumpy ride to get there. Every little report and data piece that comes out, I feel like they're all freaking out, and it puts us on a roller coaster ride for interest rates.
Yeah. So I know when we get people, Braden, when I have a shopper, there's things I can speak to in the real estate market. I speak probably ad nauseum on this channel. But when it comes to lending, for example, low closing costs is only the tip of the iceberg, or rates are really only tip. There's strategies that you can use to put people into different interest rates on the front end or different things like that. So tell these guys what options they have. You know, obviously everyone's credit's different, everyone's jobs are different, but kind of in general, like when you say high sixes, someone does the math and they're thinking, oh, I have to have X amount of payment. When they talk to you, you know, multiple times, these guys are surprised because it's less. So tell them why that is.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways that we can manipulate rates, both for your better and for your worse, depending on who you're talking to. Before I got into the industry, I used to think that interest rates were the same everywhere. That it didn't matter where you go, you were just trying to find a relationship. And that's just not the case. You can walk down to one bank and take your credit information, and then walk down the street to the next bank, same credit information, and they can be 0.5% apart simply because of how they've kind of structured the fees and how much they're making on the back end and all that kind of stuff. So lender to lender can quote very different rates. But when you go to a lender, there's two different ways to buy down your interest rate. The first one is called points. It's very normal. People usually quote interest rates with 1 point. And what that means is you're paying a fee up front, $4,000 or $5,000, to get a slightly lower rate for the 30 years. So if you pay $5,000, you're going to save $50 a month. Over the long haul, that's going to save you a lot of money. That's a traditional way of buying down your interest rate. So when I say high sixes, that's assuming you're not buying anything down. We can get you down into the low sixes or high fives if you want to put enough money down to buy points. But the other one that's really popular right now are temporary buy downs. So you can see rates popping up right now. A temporary buy down, what it does is that same $5,000, let's call it cost, instead of spreading out your savings over 30 years, you can scrunch all your savings into the first year or two. And so what they do is instead of saving $50 a month for 30 years, you'll save $400 a month for the first 24 months. And that's called a temporary buy down. Super popular, can be a great way to ease in or take advantage of some lower rates. And so with those temporary buy down rates, I'm seeing rates down in the 3s and 4s for your first couple of years as you take advantage of that rate buy down. So I say high 6s, but I have a lot of tools to get your rates a whole lot lower as we kind of work and figure out what's best for your scenario.
Yeah. I know that the loan that closed today that Braden did, it was, I think the first 12 months was around 4. Then it popped up to 5. And, no one has a crystal ball, but the hope would be that in the next couple of years, you can refinance. These guys, it works out great because these guys want to turn every house they buy into a rental. So
yep.
It works quite nicely for the investors too.
For sure.
Braden, tell me what I gave Braden a list of questions I might be asking, and this one's not on there. What is the most misconceived perception about lending? Not lenders, but lending.
That it's hard to qualify for a loan, probably. We try to educate as much as we can, but I still to this day have people calling me thinking they need 20% down. And the fact of the matter is I can get you in with that much. If you've got enough income and good credit, we can do 0 down. Credit also, people think they need a 700-800 credit, and I closed a loan the other day in the 500s. And so you don't need perfect credit. You don't need a ton of money on the side. Really, we just need to set you up. It may take 6 months to kind of create your situation so that you're ready to buy. But I feel like people still believe that homeownership is unattainable, and that's just not the case anymore. The government, in all honesty, has stepped in and has made first-time home buyers a priority. And so there are so many options out there if you want to be a homeowner to get in.
Nice. Quick reminder for those watching, tell us where you're watching from. Tell us if you're live, with the hashtag live. And then if you have any questions for Braden especially, you guys email me all the time, text me all the time, which is great. Yeah, questions, comments, where you're coming from in the comment section. That makes these like I've got questions I can ask Braden. I can keep this live, but I'd rather those questions come from you. So if you've got those, please put those in the comments, and we'll see those. Braden, one thing I bought a home with Braden in August, this home. And one thing I had no idea was how your rate lock is different. I'm sure there's another lender somewhere in the United States that does what you guys do, but what you guys do to me was very unique. I'd never heard of it, and it was very beneficial. So speak to your rate lock.
Which portion? Remind me. Lock and shop or float down or?
Float down.
Okay. Yeah. So we will always get you the best rate we can. So a lock for us is not locking you into a rate. It's creating a ceiling is how I kind of want to think about it. So we're going to lock you in today, let's say at 6.5%, and we have a 30-day close. Next week, rates are 6%. We'll float you down to that new 6% rate. And then if it goes again, we can float you down to a 5.5% rate. And so we don't have to try to time the market. A bunch of people will ask me, hey, let's lock in a week. I think it's going to be lower in a week. There's no reason. Let's just lock today. And if it's lower in a week, let's float down. So, yeah, a rate lock for me is not a guaranteed rate. It's a guaranteed ceiling. And then throughout the contract, we're just going to float down as far as we can to get you into the best rate we can.
How far does it have to float down? Is it an eighth of a point of a quarter of a point?
It's a quarter of a point. So if we allowed every single tiny little movement, that's all we'd be doing all day. So we make it be a 0.25% so that it actually will mean something. But yeah. There's contracts I float 1-2 times in a 30-day window.
Yeah, I know mine floated down and pretty substantial. I mean, yeah, I can see why not every 10th of a point or every time something moves, but yeah, it's pretty substantial. And I know when the rates are, thanks Jeff for tuning in. I know when the rates are volatile from a psychology point of view with you buyers, when rates are going up and down, psychologically, the buyer or you is just wanting things to settle because you don't want to lock at a rate and then all of a sudden it's one of the reasons, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later it's lower. This really helps, and we haven't seen volatile rates like this for decades. And so when we are able to lock and then float it down if we need to, I mean, that takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for you guys. And then add that with what he talked about already with being able to do a 2-year lower rate, essentially. That combination is pretty lethal. You mentioned Braden, the lock and shop. Can you explain to what a lock and shop is?
Yeah, so it's another just lock tool that we have in our back pocket. So if someone knows that they're going to purchase in the next 60 days, I can lock your rate before you even find the home. And so we'll lock in your rate, and then you'll go shop with Brian. And then when you find a home that you like and you get under contract, I can just apply that lock to that home and we're in underwriting. And so we want to make sure that you're actually going to move fairly quickly, just because locks have expiration dates. And so if we let that lock expire without you getting in a home, it can get a little bit expensive. But if you say, hey, I almost guarantee, like, I have to be in a home in the next 60 days, I've got to move up there for a job or whatever it is, we'll lock you in for 60 days and stop that guesswork once again. And the same thing applies. If rates drop during that lock, we just float you on down. So it's just a guaranteed price. So that way, when we're talking numbers, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's not going to be, oh, bummer, rates are up 1% this week. It's actually this.
Nice. Let's see. So a few questions there. When you look at your projections, I've heard people talk about inflation. I've heard how that relates to interest rates. Where, if you were to say scale 1 to 10, where's inflation right now at what the Fed has said? And how does that play into what you're seeing with how many loans come across your desk? Do you feel like buyers are out? Do you feel like they're waiting for the Fed to speak more? Do you feel like that, like what can you speak to the uncertainty of the market or the certainty of the market that you're seeing with how many contracts are coming across and what people's outlook is and when people are holding out for?
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot more uncertainty last year with what was going on. Like, how bad is this recession going to be? I think we kind of understand to an extent where the market's going to be, that we've gone down a little bit. Recession is coming, but it's not going to be a 2008. So I'm a microcosm. Fulcrum Home Loans is a local lender. We had about 50 contracts in December, and we have about 115 right now. And so that just shows you in Boise market, in this market, we haven't done anything different, no marketing strategies or anything, but we've doubled in contracts. And that just shows how many more buyers are out there trying to beat this spring rush, because I really do think there's going to be a big spring rush this year of buyers coming into the market.
Okay. And I don't, like I said in my intro, I don't know the market as well as you and as well as many people, but I do read market updates from people who know it. And I feel like I said, I get a little bit confused. Like, I feel like I know what's going on, and then they throw me a curveball and say, that's why the market's going down. And it's probably because the econ class you liked. And, it's econ. I remember, side tangent, here's a squirrel for y'all. I remember in econ, was like, is this a slide or a shift? And I'd always say slide, and they'd say shift. And they'd say, is it going left or right? And I'd go left, and they'd go right. I was like, always wrong. And that's how I feel with the market, is I'm always wrong. And so, like, when you talk about the spring, what I have come up with after talking to you, others, is that I do think there's going to be a spring rush. How long, I'm not sure. I've heard people say that May 12th or 14th is an important date with inflation. And so I'm wondering, and have you heard that as well? And maybe we've talked about that. Yep. Okay. It's like, I wonder if that's going to be a strict window of like, oh, inflate, it's going to be just stall people's buying. Plus, people do stall typically. If I have a graph I should bring, I mention this graph so often, but basically the number of buyers that are out there, it goes January, February, March, April, May, and then it goes down December, January. This is this repetitive thing. So I'm wondering if there's a window for this spring. And obviously we don't know, but I'm wondering if there's a window for this spring rush.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much guesswork going on in this. I think the May 14th date, I won't get super deep into it, but really that's when inflation is going to take a big turn because of how the report works. That's all I'll kind of say there. And so really, I think a lot of the econ and lenders are looking at the date and already know it's coming, but that's going to be the date that it hits like mainstream media. Like news channels will pick up, oh, inflation's coming down. And so the common person, if you would, is going to start seeing it. And so I think that will peak some of it. And the other really interesting part, Boise specific, is watching builders. I love watching builders, how many permits they're pulling, how many completions they have, and what's going on. And builders in the Boise area completely halted from like July to December. CBH is a big local builder that was pulling, they pull 20 to 40 permits a week. And for those 6 months, they were pulling one. And so when you have a big builder stop production a year later, you're going to feel that inventory squeeze. And so there's just a lot of things that are kind of lining up to that May, June timeframe.
Love it. Absolutely love it. It's like we have Bob, Jeff, and who's there? I can't remember. I can't remember who's there's name. You were here last few times, so appreciate you guys coming on. Bob is from Manila. He's Hope Hills International Ministry. Let's talk about some. I don't want to get too deep, but let's talk about some of the internet searches that have been going on. Gene's behind the scenes pulling the curtains for us. Gene, if you can pull up some Google searches for what we're seeing. This is a search. This first portion of Google that we're seeing is people from this area: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Wyoming, Idaho, Alabama, New Mexico, Montana. This is their search. This is for the past 30 days. We're getting, roughly 108, 81 respectively for those states. So that's the type of people. So when people are searching, that's where they're searching from. So that kind of shows the buyer activity for locals. Now scroll down if we can, and this is for people searching for homes for sale. You can see it in the top left there. If we scroll down, you can see. Speaking of more loan applications coming across the desk, people searching for the term homes for sale in Meridian, Idaho, up 450%. People searching for, and then you can go homes for sale, Las Vegas, Frisco, Texas, Salina, Kansas, Meridian, Idaho, 450%. To me, one of the things that I've got a front row seat in, which I absolutely love, is you guys. And that is because I produce content that gets you guys to respond to me, which is awesome. It's an awesome symbiotic relationship because I can tell how the market's doing with how many emails and phone calls I'm getting in the week. Braden can kind of tell how the market's doing because he's got a mass number of loan applications coming, and he's talking to people. Well, same thing. You're doing that, plus you're talking to Californians and Idahoans and all that type of stuff. So we're seeing a different January and February than we were in type of market than we were in the late part of 2022. I'm not sure, you don't have to add anything to that, Braden. If you have something to say, that's great, but I don't want to put you on the spot. But
no, it's interesting. I haven't seen that yet.
Let's talk about Ada County as a whole. Just if you don't mind, Gene, just putting up the whole filled out chart instead of line by line. So when we look at a snapshot of what we're looking at today, and this was probably pulled, Gene can probably tell us, but it's probably pulled yesterday or today, of all the active listings we have from today. I mean, we're almost double in all of Ada County. That number doubled, and we don't need to pull it up, but that's pretty consistent around Eagle and Meridian as well, doubled, but they have less numbers, obviously. Pending, that's a little bit more than a 4X on pending, and that's the same. It's almost the same in Eagle. And it's a 4X almost to the number in Meridian. We'll look at those in a second. We'll flash those up. Solds is a trailing number. Remember when we talk about solds, that's 30 days, right? Unless you have Braden. How fast do you guys do it, Braden?
2 weeks usually.
2 weeks. No special programs, no nothing. In fact, speaking of no special programs, we need to talk about your pre-underwriting, which is absolutely awesome. So let's earmark that topic. Go back to that chart though, Gene. So median days on market, look at that. So it's up 2x on median days on market. That is, that number is coming down from what I'm seeing, 34 to 71. And in fact, in Meridian, that's down from 65 to 49. And in Eagle, where are you at, Eagle? It's up. It's up considerably. Median sold price, 980 to 855. And keep in mind, when we look at sold prices, when people ask me, in fact, people just ask me on the phone, I don't know if you get these prices, these questions, Braden. Do people ever ask you, what's the market like? What's home prices doing? Are they softening? Are they dipping? Do you get those as well, or do you get more of the market generalities?
All the time. Yeah, people are asking me.
That's like people asking me for the market. Like, yeah, you should go talk to Braden. People ask you about home prices. You're probably like, hey, probably go talk to your agent.
Yep.
But median home prices are, if you follow this, median home prices don't always. When you take a 30-day window and you're looking at 46 solds in Eagle, I mean, that home price is going to dip up and down. I remember talking to a good friend of both Braden's and I's. He was talking about August, or it was like July. He said, oh man, it looks like the market's terribly soft and the median home price in Eagle went down 100,000. I said, well, if you've tracked it for the last 18 months, even in a healthy market, it's going up and down, because a town like Eagle, you've got a lot of luxury. You've got a price point where $500,000 gets you a 3-bed, 2-bath starter home that's 30 years old. And so you've got a fluctuating market when you have a small sample size, essentially. And I can, that's the one thing I might have taken away from econ classes is sample size. I can understand that.
There you
go. Thank you, Londa. Londa, you're a new viewer. Thank you for chiming in, watching from Salem, Oregon. Guys, if those who are on, those who have stayed with us, you obviously have an interest in buying. You obviously have an interest in some of this geek stuff. So if you have any questions, please reach out, put that comment on there, and we'll see it, whether you're watching on YouTube, which most of you are, or Facebook, or wherever you're coming from. We'll see it all come in and we'll answer it. Let's pull up Meridian Stats as well. And just to dive into this, Eagle had their highest home price sale was 3.2 million. Meridian's was 1.5. The same home in 2-3 miles away can go for 300,000 more in Eagle. But you can see the active listings. Remember those numbers I was talking about before? That's a 2x. The pending, current pendings, that's basically a 4x, almost to the number. All the solds pretty even, and median days on market down a tick. And then you can look at the median sold price. And the reason we do median is to take away that $6 million home that sold, because that takes the average up, but it doesn't necessarily take the median up. Median sold price, pretty even and pretty steady. Lowest sold price, it actually went up. And highest sold price, 1.5 million in both months. So our price is coming down. I mean, you can make an argument they are. My feel as a realtor is no, they're not. While at the same time, when you have a listing, if you're representing the seller, you've got to price smartly as well. Otherwise, buyers aren't dumb. Buyers are not dumb. They're going to get into contract for a house that's well priced, especially in this market. So it's kind of a combination. The sellers can't be greedy, and the buyers also, once they're under contract, can use these points that we've talked about with Braden, their buy downs to get in a better house. I wanted to talk about a couple stats for you. The median. So speaking of a soft market, Idaho Statesman says that this is the first time in over a year and a half that the the median sales price has dipped in Ada County below 500,000. That is at 487, 495. And then the median home price in Canyon County, to give you an idea of different prices, median home price in Canyon County is $395, so almost $100,000 different. That's what, Braden's at about a 20% difference.
Yeah,
20% difference. Braden, what do you see when things come across your desk? I've had people say, "Oh, I don't want to buy in Canyon County because the taxes are higher." Do you have a quick figure? You probably don't, on difference of payments between the two counties.
Not specific. So Idaho runs its property taxes different than most of the nation because we're a non-disclosure state. And so the government doesn't know what you pay for your home, which is really cool. And so they just send someone out there, an assessor, to try to guess the value of your home, and that's what you're taxed on. it's historically Ada County assessors are much more lenient on value and will say your home is worth less than Canyon County. That really is what it comes down to. The actual tax rates are very similar, but if your home's worth $500,000 in both counties, Canyon will say it's $490, Ada will say it's $450, and that's
Nice.
really where most of the difference in the taxes are.
Nice. And then a reminder for you guys, I've talked about this multiple times, but in Idaho, if it's your primary residence, you don't get taxed on that first $125,000 of assessed value, which is super nice. So roughly 1%, take off what the assessor is going to say your house is worth. I mean, think about it though. Think about it from a mass consumption, mass produced value. If they're off on their assessed values or they have to fight a bunch of court cases, it's a waste of their time. And playing into the tax rates, we're also a budget based, not a levy based state, which helps a ton. Anything you want to say, Braden, about why Fulcrum Home Loans? I know that I use you a ton and want to have you have a chance to speak. I mean, I know when I have someone who says I used a friend of yours to list a house, and I'm like, oh, that was the stupidest thing you could have done. I'm pretty confident in my abilities, and I like to have at least a chance to share why I think you made a dumb mistake. I wish you well, and I hope you sell for top dollar. But I want you, why Fulcrum Home Loans? Why have we developed a partnership? Like, why do I trust you for these people? What sets you apart?
Yeah. So the biggest one, consumers, is pricing. So we're a broker, so I'm not tied to any one institution. I go directly to wholesalers and get wholesale rates and pass them on to the consumers, and I own the company. And so I don't have a big bloated infrastructure that takes an extra $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 because I got to pay all these managers and regional VPs and all this stuff. And so if you walk down the street and get a loan with Fairway or Movement, love all these institutions, have great people everywhere, and then you come to us, we're usually $4,000 or $5,000 cheaper for the exact same rate. That's what consumers love. That's what we're known for. Is you price shop us, you can't really beat us. Combine that, we close really. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, didn't you say when we first got together a year and a half ago or so? Didn't you say that some people would call you a fraud? Some people like, there's no way you can get those rates. That's a fraudulent lit rate. That's all that'll come down to.
I get it all the time. Fulcrum we're the number 2 lender in the state now, so we're kind of known. But when we were first starting, I would have loan officers from other companies call me and say, you are lying to the borrower. This is not a true loan estimate. Stop doing this. You're hurting our industry. I'm like, sorry, but I'm not. Like, we just are this much cheaper than you. So yeah, it's pretty fast. But yeah. So cost is a big one. Speed. Our average clear to close is about 2 weeks. And so most of the times we're sitting there twiddling our thumbs. The one we closed with Brian today was that way. We're twiddling our thumbs for a week or two, just waiting for closing. That's so much less stressful than everyone. Going right up against the close deadline is not fun for anyone. So We'd much rather be too fast there and sit around and be bored waiting for the seller to be ready to move out of their house.
Right. And to combine that with real estate in the last year, they've added a part of the contract that says we have to have that loan all cleared up to go. All financial contingencies have to be buttoned up 5 business days before we close. And with Fulcrum, that's never an issue. In fact, one lender who I used to use that will go unnamed, like her a lot as a person, but I don't use her anymore. And it seemed like every time we went to close a loan, it was asking for an extension. I mean, it was regular. And so when you partner with the right team, and that's the part of, if you trust me, which a lot of you do, which I am super grateful for, if you're trying, if you trust me to escape California or Washington, wherever it is, I have partnered with people I trust. And that's part of that trust process. It's not trust them as a person as much as it is trust their systems. Right. And when you work with Braden handles it. Braden's got a processor. He handles, I think something like, you go processor, hand it off to person C, and then person D closes it. And if there's any hiccups, Braden can clear those things up because Braden has a system that works for you guys. Also, Braden, we had in the last week, Braden and I had a little situation, a quick story can also tell you why Fulcrum had a buyer who is trying to get qualified right now for a loan. And If you know who I'm talking about. If not, I'll give more details. Okay, so what happened was Braden's in a competitive situation, trying to win the loan. I said, hey, Braden, you might want to give these guys some sort of a verbal qualification for the home, and run them through why in this situation a pre-approval was so important. And we don't need to use company jargon. So, why the official approval is so much more important than going off their verbal, and and then I can speak to how important that is when we go put an offer.
Yeah, so this specific borrower has a type of income structure that is a little bit more variable, which happens like most income structures are not, I'm paid $20 an hour and that's it. No overtime, no commissions, no tips, no something. And so whenever you get variable income, it's a little bit harder to qualify. We just have to do our due diligence. And so they had told another loan officer at another company, I make X amount, $5,000 a month. But in actuality, that had a lot of variables in it. And so that other loan officer gave them a pre-qualification letter. And when they came over to me, I didn't just take that at face value. I said, break it down, show me a pay stub, let me look into this. And once I looked into it, I realized they couldn't get qualified because they had too many variables there I won't jump into all the nitty gritty of it. And so they had a pre-qual from another lender, and I was unwilling to give them a pre-qual because I jumped into it a little bit. And that makes a world of difference to a real estate agent, you putting in offers, because that's the last thing we want is a deal blowing up because someone didn't have all the information.
And it would have, like, bottom line, it would have. And that happened not to toot my own horn, but the whole process, the whole Keep Idaho process that we have to get you become a buyer here. The number 2 thing we do is hop on a Zoom call. And that's what we did is we hopped on a Zoom call and we ironed this out, and things come. I have 10 questions I ask. I'm not robotic about it, but I do ask 10 questions. I'm very systematic about it. And those 10 questions flesh out these things. What you're looking for in homes, financing. Have you done this before? What questions, things like that. And so when they came into this, I had to educate them, like, for that deal that closed today, for example, the reason that we beat out a cash offer is because of the pre-approval, and it was the loan had already gone through underwriting. And so that helps because the reason cash is king is because you can basically say, we're not going to have any financial contingency. If you go through underwriting, you're about at the next best thing to not having a financial contingency. And Fulcrum has added a process in their underwriting to help with that. Braden?
Yeah, so basically what I did is I want to make your closing as short as possible and say the more things I can predict up front, the easier it is on everyone. And so I went and hired a bunch of ex-underwriters, 20 years of experience working at Wells Fargo and US Bank and all these different places. And I brought them and they work with me on the pre-approval process. So whenever I talk to a buyer, they go for my pre-underwriters is what I call them. And my pre-underwriters underwrite the loans just like they will when we actually have a contract. And so that way, before you even put in an offer, I'm 100% confident that you're going to close. I know what your income is. I know every question that's going to come up. So that way I'm not reacting to surprises later on. We predict it all up front. And that's these pre-underwriters and why it's so important. And this deal that we beat out cash on, the other side was actually another realtor that I work with sometimes, and he knew I had that. So he knew that I had pre-underwriters and that my pre-approval actually means something. And so to him, it made no difference whether it went through Fulcrum or it was cash because he knew I had done my due diligence. And so Brian negotiated like a champ and came in for the win and got the home for him. But it's those kind of relationships that go the extra mile when you're trying to find a home.
100%. And as fun as home shopping is, no one wants to be looking at homes if they are homes they can't get. So for this buyer that he put through the, asked for some documentation to make it work, we're shopping. If we go and we don't know about this, we're shopping right now for homes that won't be on the market in 2 months. And so why fall in love? Why are we shopping? They're wasting their time. I'm gaining a relationship. I'm actually, it helps me to take them out because it cements that relationship even more. So it's not as selfish. I don't want to waste time. It helps the buyer out because after your 20th home, home shopping becomes a little bit of a chore. And the whole process that we have, the Zoom call, the underwriting, the lending, the financing, what are you looking for, eliminating all this stuff into one, the final dream home is all aimed at you not missing out on any houses, you not buying a lemon, you paying the best price possible for that home, and not wasting any time. If you do those 4 things, and you will, I've hit on 3 of buyers' biggest fears, and that process we've developed breaks that down so that you don't miss out on any homes, don't overpay, and you don't buy a lemon. Those are the 3 things that you don't want, and that's what the process is geared for. And like truly, I can't stress enough how important a good lender is. A good agent is good too. I had those same buyers. I'll speak real quick to them. Those same buyers who are closing tomorrow. A lot of stories from them, but they were under contract with a different agent and a different lender 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, and they basically were told one thing from the agent, and then they were told one thing from the lender, and those things, it went from a $3,500 a month payment to $5,500 a month, and I'm not over exaggerating those numbers. And that came from a lender who, an agent who partners with the wrong lender. And since I'm not saying their name, I have no problem saying how incredibly terrible that is. And so if you're with someone you trust, and if you can trust me, you can trust my partners. And I think it's clear to see for me with what Braden shared today of how awesome Fulcrum is and what they've built over there. I mean, Braden, just so you guys know, Braden 3 years ago was Fulcrum wasn't around 3 years ago, 3 years and change. It's right about 3 years. And is that right? And
Yep.
Now they're the second in Idaho. There's a reason they're the second in Idaho. It's not because they pat in my pocket when I give them deals, because that's actually illegal. It's because we have a partnership that works on trust, and that's how they work with all their agents as well. So, Braden, anything else from you on the market, on the process, on Fulcrum, on yourself, on your BYU number 31 jersey up there in the corner, or anything else?
No, go Cougs. Played for them for years. But
Fight
no,
on.
I think we've covered a lot of it. I think it's a really unique market right now. There are so many real estate professionals that for 2 years have been saying it's the perfect time to buy. It's the perfect time to buy. It's the perfect time to buy. And it
always
drives
is.
me nuts. I know it always is, because it's perfect for their pocketbooks.
Yep.
But to partner with someone like Brian that can actually sit down and say, here's the statistics, this is what we're looking at, here's where the homes are at. Like, the fact that he was able to throw those slides up and walk city by city of what's going on shows that he'll actually educate and walk you through it and be an advocate for you rather than a salesman. And that's what you want in this market, is figure out where your situation's at, what you can afford. Is it a good time to buy? Is this a good market and city? Because we're in a weird time right now. Rates are volatile. Home prices are moving. We don't know where we're going to be in 6 months. And a year ago, you could buy anywhere in the valley and get $100,000 of appreciation. Where now you have to be a little bit more selective. Buying the home by the railroad tracks with the freeway in your background actually hurts your value, where it really didn't a year ago, because you could sell anything. So partnering with the right people to navigate this market is the most important thing that I could kind of emphasize.
Yep. And I appreciate that. And like, I was born and raised in the Boise Valley. I went to Meridian High School, Braden as well, but he went to Eagle High School. I lived in Eagle for the last 7 or 8 years. Now I'm out in Middleton. Like, there are very few streets. In fact, actually the street I went on today, there's one street I went on today. I was like, I've never been on this street. And it was actually 2 blocks away from a very, thoroughly used road. Like, being a local, I feel like I don't know how I'd do it in any other city. A lot of people move in from out of state and all of a sudden, like, I feel like even within Eagle, there's different markets. I mean, I'm talking a $100,000 price dip from one neighborhood to the next across Floating Feather. Like, why? Well, it's just the way it is, and there's reasons for that. But I could go on and on about how many different micro pockets there are in Eagle and Star and Middleton and Meridian. I mean, those are the places I really, 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 really know and like and really hang around all the time. So 2 local dudes here. And the cool thing is Braden loves the econ. I was an appraiser before I was a real estate guy, and that's what I always wanted to do, is be an appraiser growing up. The weirdest fourth grader dream there was, but that's what I did. And because a student of a week, his dad was an appraiser and talked about all the cool homes he went through. I was like, sounds fun to me. You get paid for that. And anyway, transitioned to real estate. And I mean, really, you don't have to have someone local. I mean, there's other great people in the industry, but 2 local dudes, and love to talk about the market, love talking about homes. So if we can earn your trust, hit us up. My number's flashing across the screen, 208-213-2092, Brian@brianheimers.com. Braden is Braden, that first name there, at fulcrumhomeloans.com. Boom. Oh, sweet, Gene. I love that. Thanks for having that up there. His number is there and his email is there. That email, I think Braden at fulcrumhomeloans.com works as well.
Both come to the exact same inbox. Either one works.
Check that out. He's just a magician with the inbox. So without any other further questions, Brad, thanks for chiming in as well. Appreciate you guys joining us. And with that, we will sign off. So thank you for joining.